How confident are you that some of that collaboration can happen right now?
We're now at one of those defining moments that I've seen repeatedly. The 1930 to 45 period, if you go back in history, there's nothing new to this. And it's a defining moment in terms of how people are with each other. So when you look at it, will people come together? Or when it comes down to it, really, will there be a taking care of oneself? And what does that define? And how will that go? That'll be, I think, a defining moment. So I look at these histories. If I can take a minute, I'd like to just paint a template for you that takes us, over the last 1,000 years, the things that have happened over and over again. There is one pattern that I'd like to convey. May I take a moment and do that?
Absolutely.
There are 4 things that are the driving forces of our economy and our lifestyle and wealth. And the first and most powerful is productivity, which comes from people learning and inventing and doing things well, just as Marco described. Okay? And it grows slowly. 1 or 2 or 3% a year, it grows slowly, and it's not volatile because knowledge isn't volatile, but it grows, and that raises our living standards over a period of time. Then there's a short-term debt cycle. The short-term debt cycle is, recessions and expansions and booms and recessions, that they last about 8-10 years. And then there's a long-term debt cycle. And that long-term debt cycle, which goes on about once every 50 to 75 years, is when you begin a new type of money and a new type of credit. That began in 1945. The New World Order, at the end of World War II, and with the Bretton Woods monetary system, created a new monetary system in 1945, a new money. So they wiped out pretty much the old money, or they largely disposed of it, and they began anew, and that's the New World Order, which was the American world order, and we have seen it, and still 70% of the money and credit that exists in the economy is running by dollars, and what you have traditionally is the breakdown. And then the fourth influence is politics, and politics is largely how we deal with each other. And there's internal politics and there's external politics. The internal politics is, how do you deal with the wealth gap? How do you deal with the values gap? Do you have a common mission? Do we have an American dream that we can agree on and that we're pursuing that together? Or do you fight over wealth and so on? And so when you look at history, that's what revolutions are in their various ways. And there's always a revolution in one of these. Sometimes those are peaceful revolutions, and so sometimes they're disruptive. But it's a wealth shift that needs to take place. So the Roosevelt shifted policies and changed taxes and so on in that way. And then in other countries, there was the turning over democracy. Hitler came to power because of that gap. So how people deal with each other internally. There's also external politics. So that politics means between countries. And you have a situation when there's a rising power challenging existing power. There is competition and there is a risk of war. And so how they deal with each other, so that whether there's a greater good or whether they are fighting with each other, is the defining moment. There are always stress tests, these big stress tests that come along once every 75 years. And when they happen, and this is a stress test. And I think that what you're going to see is as how we deal with each other. There's enough wealth to go around, but what do you do when you're outside the ring of support, let's say of the US dollar? And what is that going to be like for those entities? Or if you're within the ring of support, how will that bill be divided? And how will we be with each other? I think we're going to have to reconsider who has what is it about education and so on. So that's what we're in, I think.